Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional thought. Today we're talking about gaming the system. Have you ever played that game, the McDonald's Monopoly game, where you get the little folded up board and it's just that real thin paper, but then all around it you have to go ahead and you take those little stickers that you get on the side of a large Coke or a Big Mac or a fry, and you try to see if you can get the pieces. And if you're like me, maybe you got a small French fry or maybe a little McFlurry, or even if you're lucky you got another sandwich. But I don't know that I ever won one of those big time prizes. And you know why? Probably because you never won it either, because of a guy by the name of Uncle Jerry. Uncle Jerry, his name was Jerome Jacobson. He was a retired police officer who worked for the company that handled McDonald's game pieces, especially those big game pieces. And for years, Uncle Jerry, he figured out a way to go ahead and give friends and family members those big game pieces, and he passed them off to them. And one of the things that he told them to do, though, was that in order so he didn't get caught, was to go ahead and to make sure that they passed them off to their friends and family members out of state, so it couldn't come back and be connected to him. What turned out, though, was after a little while, 25 FBI agents across the country tracked 20,000 phone numbers and recorded 235 cassette tapes of telephone calls. And they found that most of the winners lived within a 25-mile radius of one person, Uncle Jerry. What they found was this, is that if Uncle Jerry would have gone for about 5 years or so doing this scam and kind of ripping off the company and ripping off McDonald's, they would have never found out if he would have shut it down after even just 5 years, and that's a pretty good time. But he got greedy and he kept on this scam, this scheme. He kept it up for 10 years, and they said if he would have stopped, he would have gotten away with it, but he didn't. He kept going. Why? Well, because like you, like me, and like his friends and family of Uncle Jerry, people are greedy. It's the understanding that sometimes for us, as we live our lives, we feel like we're in kind of a situation where if we want to get ahead, it's dog eat dog. And yet there's authors like Lewis Carroll who wrote Alice in Wonderland, where he wrote this satirical expression of hyperbole of his society around him. He talked about his main character, Alice, who, in order for her to get into the Wonderland, she had to go ahead and drink a potion, drink that shrank her. And when she shrank too small, she had to go ahead and eat a little cake to make her bigger. And when she got to be too big, then finally she got to the right size, and she entered a world of Mad Hatters and Cheshire Cats and raving mad queens of rose gardens. And what we find is this picture that seems like it's so upside down that really sometimes the Christian life is like that as well. And it's not the crazy chaoticness of this irrationality of Lewis Carroll's story, but we find with God, we see that there is this kind of bizarro world that doesn't always make sense. Jesus says that if you want to be great, you have to be last. If you want to be first, you have to serve. If you want to have leadership and influence, you have to go ahead and be willing to give your life away. If you want to gain, you have to lose. If you want to go high, you have to go low. And so as we think about this, creating a life that we love and finding freedom, it's not about us, and we've talked about this before, because of us, about us, or for us, but it's about living our lives for other people. It's about getting out of this crazy rat race, if you will, of trying to game the system. Now, we live in a situation where we find ourselves just going from one day to another. There's a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical called Les Miserables, and there's a song called One Day More. And it talks of the French Revolution and how people were in despair and they were discouraged. They were doomed to a destiny of sadness and frustration. But it also speaks of a day of new beginnings, of revolutions, of overcoming the tyranny and the oppression of oppressors. And so there's a difference between one more day and one day more. One more day is just a day of monotony, of just a mediocre life, of just trudging through things. But one day more speaks of a day of a change of direction, of new opportunities, of new beginnings, of fresh starts. And you can choose to live for yourself one more day, or you can choose to live one day more for God and for others. As you change your view and your focus from yourself onto God and others, it's amazing how things can change and happen. And maybe our prayer today can be this, simply, God, use me so that I might be a blessing to others. We find in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 12, that Paul unpacks this concept about giving and living to give. Some people, well, they live to work. They're consumed with their work. Some people work so they can live. Others work so they can give. And then there's a small few who figured out, and that's what we're talking about today, that they live to give. They live to give of their life to other people. For more encouragement, go ahead and unpack 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 12. Thanks so much for watching.